order to understand Neptune, you're going to have to use your power of observation real good. Okay? Neptune takes 156 years to go around your chart. That means that he takes 14 years, twice as double as Uranus, to transit a sign. So a good majority of us do not see Neptune transit in every single sign of our chart, because of the reason that he takes 14 years to go in every single sign. So we feel that energy for 14 years, and it's extremely vaguer than Uranus. So that means that you're going to have to really sit down and try to analyze, where does Neptune show up in your life. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Now, for example, my natal Neptune is in the second house. Okay. And what does that mean? What is the second house? The second house pertains to possession. The second house pertains to things that you own, your money, okay? Things you value. So here's where you have to sit down and say, my God, where does Neptune show up in my possessions? How would Neptune show and manifest itself? And I can tell you how Neptune would show in my possessions. Now, first of all, Neptune represents illusion. It represents also creativity, imagination. But on its negative side, it represents delusional. Okay? Drugs, addictions. So, when we combine Neptune with possessions, you're going to see a person that likes mythical possessions. And you could see it all over the things that I buy. It's always fairies or birds or mythical creatures. Look at my comforter. My comforter is like a goddess. Everything I own is like so comfortable and so indulgent. And that's the characteristic of Neptune. And it's always going to be like that. It's always going to be like that. My house is always going to look like some sort of fairy tale. Okay. Thanks to Neptune in my second house. Now, when Neptune transits your third house, like it did to mine, expect to see a little bit of imagination when you communicate. Now, let me give you an example. Neptune was transiting my third house throughout my high school year and my school years, and I learned how to write in other languages, so the teacher would not be able to read my notes with my friends. And every time they would get my notes, they weren't able to decipher what the note said. And I learned how to speak other languages too, so the teacher would not understand me, and I would not get into any trouble. So Neptune in the third house, really, what it did was that it made me very creative in communicating. Okay, and it created a veil for other people not to be able to read me. Okay, I created a veil so people can't read me, especially teachers, people with authority. So through Neptune going to my third house, I developed a very creative way of communicating. Now, when Neptune goes into your fourth house, what I've learned about that is that my home, my privacy, my domain has to be some sort of fantasy too. Not only my possessions, like the things that I own, the material things I own, but also my domain, my surroundings, my personal private surroundings have to be spiritual. They have to be with incense. They have to be with fog and waterfalls, and it has to be like that. Okay, when Neptune transits my fourth house, that's what I picked up from Neptune. Now, when Neptune transits your fifth house, and actually it's in my fifth house now, okay, of romance, you're gonna want your partner to be mythical. Okay, probably you'll probably be a little bit too delusional, because reality is something else, and then you're faced with people that constantly disappoint you because they fall below expectation for you. So throughout this period of time, you might experience a lot of disappointment because people are just not what you want them to be. Okay, when Neptune transits your fifth house. Now, when Neptune transits your sixth house pertains to routine and health, and maybe you're going to be a little bit unrealistic about your health. Maybe you might be not seeing things the way they are, with your health. There might be a lot of shadiness, but also you could get creative with your workout routine. Now, when Neptune transits your seventh house, you could be more susceptible for unfaithful partners, or being cheated on, or cheat on someone. Because Neptune, it also pertains to being deceitful, okay? And you could just attract business partners or people that you get together with, that they could, be not what it is that they seem to be. When Neptune transits your eighth house, you're going to have issues with enemies, okay, hidden enemies, because Neptune is a veil, and when you put the 8th house together with the veil, because the 8th house symbolizes other people, you're going to attract a lot of enemies, hidden enemies especially, okay? So something you have to be watchful for. And also, you're going to have a very high sense of fantasy when it comes to your interaction with sex. You might want to be experimenting with tantra, other arts, okay, and also get really deeper into the occult, which is actually the beneficial aspect of Neptune going into the 8th house. Okay, everything has a negative and a positive. When Neptune goes into your 9th house, now I think it could be exalted here, because the 9th house pertains to knowledge, higher knowledge. So when Neptune goes into your 9th house, you could be experiencing spiritual enlightenment, but also you could be into dogma, and you could be falling for false beliefs, okay? Because Neptune is, like I said, it could be deceitful. Now when Neptune goes into your 10th house, you could be putting up a face that it's not real, it's not the real you, okay? But it could also mean, in a positive note, it could also mean that you are very animated, okay, with the face that you put into the world, okay? People are like, wow, this person has some style, when they dress, they're so mythical, you know what I mean? Now when Neptune goes into your 11th house, you gotta watch out with friends, because they might not be who they are for those 14 years. But at the same time, you could also be attracting friends that are very animated too, okay? And friends that do drugs too, so be careful, because Neptune pertains to drugs. When Neptune goes into your 12th house, it could mean that you could be facing a lot of alone time. But in that alone time that you have a very, very big imagination, because the 12th house pertains to imagination. So it's actually on its aspect, it's actually in its own house. It rules that house. So you might be too indulgent, you might be too lazy, or you might be too imaginative. You would always keep a balance there. When Neptune goes into your first house, it can mean that you are very delusional with who you think you are as a person, okay? You could be facing, you could think that you're something and then you're not, and at the same time, you could be very animated yourself, okay, with how you view yourself. You could be very creative with how you dress. You might be painting your hair purple or blue or green because you want to be, different, okay? You want to express that artistic side of you. So I hope this video shed some light on Neptune, and namaste.